While the rest of the world sleeps, the IRS just hit the ignition switch on a massive wave of stimulus payments set to flood bank accounts starting March 4th. But there is a terrifying catch that nobody is talking about: the shadow window. This is a razor-thin, high-stakes time frame where the digital gates swing open and then slam shut. If you aren't positioned perfectly within those few hours, your claim is lost to the system's bureaucratic void forever. Imagine the gut punch of watching your neighbors, your friends, and even your rivals posting about their windfalls while you're left staring at a payment status not available screen, haunted by the realization that you were just inches away from the life-changing liquidity everyone else is already spending. You cannot afford to be the ghost in the machine, forgotten by an automated process that doesn't care about your bills. That's why I've built a Fort Knox solution for you right here. A hardened, foolproof blueprint that slices through the red tape and bypasses the noise to ensure your name is at the top of the distribution list. Here's our game plan for today. We are diving deep into the ironclad eligibility requirements that determine who wins and who waits. Then, we'll deconstruct the ticking clock of the shadow window to ensure you hit the deadline with surgical precision. And finally, we'll activate the fraud filter to shield your payment from the predators currently circling this release. The eligibility floodgates are officially open, but if you think this is a simple matter of checking a box and waiting for a notification, you are already falling behind the curve. You need to visualize the IRS mainframe not as a static database, but as a colossal, multi-lane superhighway where the speed of data determines the speed of your survival. On one side, you have the high-speed express lane, a frictionless vacuum where clean data, verified bank routing numbers, and perfectly synced tax filings scream past the checkpoints in a literal blink of an eye. This is where the Fort Knox strategy places you, in a streamlined corridor where the algorithms identify your profile, validate your March 4th eligibility in milliseconds, and greenlight the transfer before the system even has a chance to stutter. But right next to it, separated by a digital concrete barrier that feels 1,000 miles thick, is the soul-crushing traffic jam. This is the purgatory of the shadow window, a congested, idling mess of outdated addresses, mismatched social security digits, and paper check requests that are being manually flagged by a system that is designed to reject anything that isn't perfect. In this lane, time doesn't just crawl, it expires. Every second you spend idling in the traffic jam is a second where the allocated funds are being sucked up by those in the express lane, leaving you to fight for the scraps of a budget that the mainstream media tells you is guaranteed, but the technical reality proves is finite. The system is filtering data at a rate that would make a supercomputer sweat, looking for any excuse to kick your file into a manual review pile that might not be touched for 6 months. Now, let's get real for a second, because there is a massive chasm between what you're hearing on the nightly news and the cold, hard reality of the IRS master file. The myth being peddled by every talking head is that the ratification means the money is already yours, as if there's a giant vault with your name on it just waiting for a key. That is a dangerous lie. The reality, the secret that the bureaucrats won't tell you, is that ratification is merely the starting gun for a digital Hunger Games. The media misses the fact that the IRS uses a cyclical posting logic. If your data hits the system on a Tuesday but the cycle closes on a Monday, you are automatically bumped to the next wave, which could be weeks away. They won't tell you that a single dollar discrepancy in your reported income versus your 1099-K forms will trigger an invisible freeze code that locks your account without ever sending you a letter. You'll be sitting there, refreshing your browser, wondering why your neighbor got paid and you didn't, while the system has already silently sidelined you. This isn't a glitch. It's a feature of a system designed to protect the Treasury first and serve the citizens second. You have to understand that the shadow window isn't a physical deadline. It's a data syncing phenomenon. If you aren't visible in the right light at the exact moment the satellite passes over, you are effectively invisible to the entire stimulus infrastructure. To understand the sheer, terrifying weight of this, you have to look at someone like Margaret. Picture her sitting at a scarred wooden kitchen table at 2 a.m., the blue light of her smartphone illuminating the deep lines of exhaustion on her face. Her heart wasn't just beating, it was thudding against her ribs like a trapped bird because her bank account was sitting at a staggering $4.12, and the power company had already sent the final notice in a bright pink envelope that sat like a weight on her counter. Suddenly, her phone buzzed with a notification that made her blood turn to ice. A master file lock alert, claiming her March 4th payment was suspended due to a security breach. Her hand shook so violently she nearly dropped the phone. The message had a link, a glowing neon blue lifeline that promised to verify identity now and release the funds. In that moment of crushing desperation, with the weight of her unpaid bills pressing down on her chest like a physical slab of lead, Margaret's thumb hovered over that link. It was the ultimate trap, designed to exploit the exact fear that keeps you awake at night. But then, she remembered the 3 alarms. The first alarm sounded in her mind when she realized the tone of the message was a jagged ultimatum, a do this or lose everything scream that felt more like a mugging than a government memo. She took a ragged breath and realized the system, the cold, unfeeling, slow-moving IRS, never uses that kind of high-octane emotional leverage. They are a machine of protocols, not threats. The second alarm went off when she looked at the sender address. It was a jumble of alphanumeric soup, a digital disguise that looked nothing like the formal architecture of a real federal gateway. The third and final alarm was the realization that the system was asking for a deposit fee to expedite the processing, a classic pay-to-play scam that has no place in the actual stimulus framework. Margaret pulled her thumb back from the brink, her heart still pounding, but the cold sweat was starting to dry. She realized that the master file lock wasn't a death sentence for her finances, it was a test of her resolve. Instead of falling for the bait, Margaret executed the simple fix that regained her entire life in less than 10 minutes. She didn't call a hotline or wait in a 3-hour queue. She bypassed the noise and went directly into her authenticated tax transcript portal. Through her own eyes, we see the shift from victim to victor. She saw the code 840 on her screen, a technical indicator that her payment was actually staged and ready, but merely waiting for a simple address confirmation that the system hadn't updated since 2022. By manually inputting her current residence and refreshing her direct deposit info, she watched the status bar jump from a stagnant gray to a vibrant, glowing green. The crushing weight that had been sitting on her chest for months evaporated instantly. She wasn't a ghost in the machine anymore. She was in the express lane. She looked at that pink envelope on the table, and for the first time in a year, she didn't feel afraid. She knew that on March 4th, the system would find her, validate her, and deliver the relief she had fought so hard to secure. This is the level of intensity you need to bring to your own situation. The shadow window is closing, and the traffic jam is getting longer by the hour. If you don't take control of your data right now, if you don't learn to recognize the 3 alarms that saved Margaret, you are choosing to be left behind while the rest of the country moves forward into the light. The Fort Knox solution isn't just about getting paid. It's about the psychological warfare of outsmarting a system that is rigged to overlook the unprepared. You have the map, you have the strategy, and you have the warning. The only question left is whether you're going to sit at the table with a shaking hand, or if you're going to take the wheel and drive straight into the high-speed express lane before the gates lock for good. This is your commander's intent, the strategic blueprint that separates those who receive their legacy from those who are erased by the machine. Your first maneuver is the digital audit, where you strip away the layers of bureaucratic fog by logging directly into your IRS transcript portal to ensure your data matches their reality with surgical precision. This is immediately followed by the first strike, an aggressive verification of your direct deposit architecture that forces the system to recognize your presence in the high-speed express lane before the March 4th surge begins. You must then initiate the lockdown, a defensive posture where you ignore every unsolicited text or email, recognizing that the system never negotiates through fear, only through established protocols. Finally, you execute the backup, securing physical or digital copies of your confirmation codes so that if the system stutters, you have the ironclad proof required to demand what is yours. Understand the golden rule of this entire operation. A delay is not a loss, but silence is a forfeit. This is the deep philosophy of the prepared. If the system pauses, it is merely a mechanical hiccup that can be corrected. But if you remain silent and fail to engage with your own data, you are voluntarily surrendering your place in line to someone who wanted it more. You are not a victim of the shadow window unless you choose to stay in the dark. To ensure you stay ahead of every shifting algorithm and last-minute ratification, you must subscribe right now for our next live update because in this environment, information is the only weapon that doesn't dull. Share this broadcast immediately to protect your community from the predators circling these funds, and comment your status below to join this movement of informed, empowered citizens who refuse to be left behind. You have been given the map, but now I challenge you to be a protector and pay it forward by reaching out to one person in your circle who is currently drowning in the noise of the mainstream media and pulling them into the light. Real leadership isn't just about securing your own bank account. It's about ensuring the people you care about don't fall for the traps that nearly broke Margaret. Ultimately, as the dust settles on March 4th, you will realize that while the money is essential, peace of mind is the only currency that truly matters. When you lay your head down tonight, do so with the absolute certainty that you have outsmarted the system and fortified your future. Remember, the system only has power over the unprepared. Now that you know the truth, you are officially untouchable. This is your commander's intent, the final strategic blueprint that separates those who claim their legacy from those erased by the machine. Your first maneuver is the digital audit, where you strip away the bureaucratic fog by logging into your portal to ensure your data matches the IRS reality with surgical precision. This is followed immediately by the first strike, an aggressive verification of your direct deposit architecture that forces the system to recognize your presence in the high-speed express lane before the March 4th surge. You must then initiate the lockdown, a defensive posture where you ignore every unsolicited text or email, recognizing that the system never negotiates through fear, only through established protocols. Finally, you execute the backup, securing digital copies of your confirmation codes so that if the system stutters, you have the ironclad proof required to demand what is yours. Understand the golden rule of this entire operation. A delay is not a loss, but silence is a forfeit. This is the deep philosophy of the prepared. If the system pauses, it is merely a mechanical hiccup. But if you remain silent and fail to engage with your own data, you are voluntarily surrendering your place in line to someone who wanted it more. You are not a victim of the shadow window unless you choose to stay in the dark. To ensure you stay ahead of every shifting algorithm, you must subscribe right now for our next live update, because in this environment, information is the only weapon that doesn't dull. Share this broadcast immediately to protect your community from the predators circling these funds, and comment your status below to join this movement of informed, empowered citizens who refuse to be left behind. I challenge you to be a protector and pay it forward by reaching out to one person in your circle who is currently drowning in the noise and pulling them into the light. Real leadership is ensuring the people you care about don't fall for the traps that nearly broke Margaret. Ultimately, as the dust settles on March 4th, you will realize that while the money is essential, peace of mind is the only currency that truly matters. When you lay your head down tonight, do so with the absolute certainty that you have outsmarted the system and fortified your future. The system only has power over the unprepared. Now that you know the truth, you are officially untouchable.